Hey, Don Bryn, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Dr. Bell?
No, I'm better than I deserve, as my favorite financial advisor tends to tell me over and over.
Shifting us a little.
Uh, I feel like, you and I have worked together in so many different facets, making music, teaching music as colleagues, as collaborators. You have helped me do website development. You have helped me with arranging things that I need done. And I tell everybody that I meet that Don Bryn is the smartest man I know, because it's true. I should expand. Don Bryn is the smartest person I know. There's nothing that I know of that you can't do and do well. I'm just going to say that because you need to know my high level of respect for you before we go any further.
Well, I appreciate that, but it makes me want to just say you don't know me well enough then if you don't know the bad parts yet.
Well, we
I,
all have our secrets, but
I appreciate it.
yeah. So I find it interesting because so many of us, when I was on the music faculty at the State College of Florida and we were able to work together daily, so many of the music faculty came from different paths to get where they were. And I find yours really the most fascinating. And I think it's important that we would share a little bit of your background and how was it about 2012 that you came into the fold at State College of Florida?
11 or 12, somewhere right
Somewhere
around
around
there.
there.
Yep.
But it's not the traditional path. My path,
No.
I was a music education major and I taught high school band and like I didn't have the same performing opportunities all across the planet that you've had. So tell us, you are primarily a piano player.
I would probably disagree with you, but
Well, okay, you
the
you
way
came
I tell people.
you came into music as a piano player?
Yes. So I came into music. I mean, I was playing piano when I was 5. I started playing piano. So that's always been sort of my main focus, sort of from other people. And that's how I made most of my money was playing and conducting. Um,
I just want to say something real quick because learning to play the piano, especially at age 5, is a very isolated exercise, right? It's just you and a piano practicing. You go to your lesson once a week. But me as a trumpet player, I grew up in junior high band where we had 11 trumpet players, and it was making music with others in a large ensemble right from the get-go. So I always find that a fascinating juxtaposition between a piano player and somebody that grew up in high school band or orchestra program or even choir, where you're immediately singing or performing with other people.
and
Have you
this
ever thought about that?
actually, now that you bring it up, it is fascinating. I hadn't really put it in that, thought about it that way before, but I was really lucky. In high school, I started singing in choir, and then in college, I started playing for orchestras and things. So I did start playing with some other, in ensembles at that point. But yeah, you're right. Which I think has something to do with a lot with why I think of music a lot more from like a composer's perspective and a lot more from like what's going on inside the music. Because for me, by the time I was, a teenager, I was just playing. I would just open sonata books and just play and play because I was sort of trying to understand what was happening in the music. So, I really think of myself more as a composer, an arranger first. I don't necessarily do as much work as I do playing, but I'm always thinking of music that way. It's
But
fast.
there had to be a shift, right? From age 5. Now, when you were in your high school chorus, were you ever asked to be the accompanist for that choir?
Yeah, yeah. I played for choir all through high school.
Okay. So at some point in time, you said in your head, "Ooh, I could write my own piece of music, or I could arrange this better than this." When did you see that shift starting for you?
It's funny. I can't think of a shift. I was already doing it. Like when I was in high school, I was already writing pieces and songs and all kinds of stuff. So when I went to college, I went as a piano major. Um, but excuse me, by the time I was, sophomore in theory, I ended up taking theory privately because I would just, excuse me, I was kind of going too fast for the class. So I took theory privately. So already by then I was really planning on being a composer and getting ready for graduate school as a composer.
But you didn't shift your major to composition. You were a piano performance major for 4 years of undergraduate school. Where did you go?
I went to Duquesne University. I got my undergrad in piano performance and music technology. They started it right about my freshman or sophomore year. So I was the first person to graduate with a music tech degree from Duquesne.
But what would music technology look back like in like 1975? No, I'm kidding. What
I might hang up on you.
year? What year would this have been?
I got my undergraduate in 1990. I graduated with my music tech degree.
So what did music technology look like in 1990 versus 2024?
It's pretty fascinating, actually. I went to Paris a few years ago, and they have an instrument museum in Paris, and it goes all the way back from, naturally made instruments out of rock, whatever, all the way up until, and there was a Yamaha DX7, and I just about, my jaw dropped because I was like, that's what we played in college. And it's in a museum now as the first major digital synthesizer. So, computers were tiny and took a long time to do things, compared to today. Although at the time we were like, oh, look how fast it's getting.
Right. But you didn't know any different at that time.
Right. But the degree or the academic path itself was much more technical. Like we actually studied, bits, how bits traveled down cables and how that turned into MIDI language and things like that. And the audio and acoustics and the science of acoustics and sound waves and vibrations and things. And sort of now a lot of that is handled by technology so much that we don't necessarily have to go, that deep into it. We can study more of the music side of it. Well, how do you write a string line and make it sound like a string line and not like a piano?
Right, because it's somewhere along the way. It was around that time, maybe 1995 or so. Music notation software was available to us, and just to see the growth of that, and how that even daily, I used music notation software to do all sorts of things, not just to write music, but to really do all sorts of things.
Mm-hmm. We use we do it a lot in education too. Really helps us put together things for education, for students, for exercises, things like that. Yeah.
I often relate it to when you used to take handwriting classes and you would write stories by hand. And, if you think about the transition from the written word to the printed word, and how you don't really have to think about commas or periods or punctuation things anymore. It fixes your spelling for you, that sort of thing. The music notation software, Finale or Sibelius, does the same thing, right? I remember when I was in undergraduate music theory, and we were taught the stems go one octave, and if it's the note is above the middle line, the stem goes down, etc. And you don't really have to process those thoughts anymore because the computer does that all for you. I see a similarity between the written word versus typed word versus written music versus notation, software.
Yeah, that's
Makes
really,
life easier.
yeah, for sure. And even when you get into orchestration and things like that, and so much of film scoring now is done. A lot of it is done electronically. Even if you're going to eventually have some real instruments involved, and the ability of the plugins now to make it sound real without you. We used to have to go in and edit curves and attacks and decays and to try and get something to sound like a real musician played it. And now a lot of that is sort of handled by software. So it gives you, you can write faster.
Built in, very nice.
Yeah.
So you finished Duquesne. At the time with that music technology portion of your degree, did you ever think that was going to get you like where it did eventually, or were you just doing that because you were kind of interested in the techie side of music?
Well, I was thinking I would be a composer, and so you have to know the technology. At that point, it was like, if you're going to be a composer, you're going to need the technology. And I did use it right away. I started musical directing a lot of musical theater shows and things, and I was always rearranging things for different instruments, or like you do with the Pops Orchestra, you're constantly like, oh, I need to take a bassoon part and turn it into a saxophone part, or I need to rearrange it for something. So I was already doing that, and the technology was really useful for that. And also with musical theater, we started doing a lot of, this was the time when orchestras were getting smaller. So they were using more keyboards. So you were using the technology of the keyboards to create string sounds and woodwind sounds to sort of beef up the sound with fewer musicians. Sorry, it's kind of a fact.
No, but well, we all know that that's the case, you know, and now you go to Broadway and that orchestra is not anywhere even near you. You got a drummer 10 blocks down on the 10th floor, and you got a trumpet player 3 blocks down on the 3rd floor. And that, you know, it's like, how are we doing this? It's all really music technology. All right. So you're musical directing, you at some point in time go
Well,
get a master's degree.
yep. I actually went straight through and got my master's right at Duquesne. It was an excellent opportunity for me, and they had a great composition program. So I did that, graduated in 92. And that's really when I was transitioning to doing a lot of musical directing and things. And that summer, I had a summer about 2 years later, 94. I hadn't any gigs lined up for the summer. And I got this random phone call from someone in like North Carolina and said, I have a gig in Australia as a musical director. Can you go next week? And I said, yes. So I didn't even have a passport. I had never really been, I'd only flown to Florida once, I think, and Minnesota once. So it was a pretty big adventure, and I loved it. And so I got a job. That job was actually musical directing for a cruise line out of Sydney. And that was amazing. That first trip, we went to like Bali and Papua New Guinea and Vanuatu and the Solomon Islands, like these places now that I realize people don't get to go there. But I was so young and naive. I was like, oh, this is great. Everybody must do this when they graduate.
Well, and we, you know, we shouldn't discount your love of travel. That probably came through this. I mean, you have been literally all over this planet,
Yeah.
and you're not the kind to go on like group travel tours. You're going to go and you're going to live in a place for several weeks and become a member of the culture there, which is another fascinating thing that I love about you. I feel like anywhere I go, I can just call you up. I'm going to go here, and you've got all your, you know, insider trading tips on
You know,
place.
I used to, because I literally used to travel all but maybe 3 weeks a year. I was traveling somewhere for 14 years. I did that. So most of it was that kind of travel. And then when I would have, I worked for cruise lines, so I would work for 8 months and then I would take 2 months off. So I could travel for 6 weeks somewhere. So I would rent an apartment in Buenos Aires for a month, or go to Guatemala backpacking in the mountains, or yeah.
That's the life of Riley, my dad would say. That's the life of Riley right there.
We were just talking actually about plans for this summer, you know, where to go. And I said, you know, it's got to be someplace I've never been. I like feeling like a minority. I like feeling like it's a culture that I can explore that's different than mine. So
Have you thought about Palmetto? I'm just kidding.
I have.
You can,
I've
you can
explored.
edit, you can edit that out. Well, we are going to Paris this summer, and so I have to sit with you, and you have to tell me everything. Obviously, I now know I can go to an instrument museum in Paris. I want to go to the Paris Conservatory, but there's other places, the Paris Opera House. You're going to have to tell me how I cram all of these wonderful adventures in 7 days' time. It's not enough.
During the Olympics too, that'll be tough.
Well, so we're going to have to back it up. The price of everything during the Olympics is like, ugh. So we're going to go in May.
Oh, good for you. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. That's a good time of year too, before it gets too hot.
So all this travel, you're doing all this music directing on cruise ships and travel vessels, if you will. You are, if I recall in conversations, you lived kind of were stationed, if you will, in Hawaii, beautiful place. You always had your family ties back in the Pennsylvania area.
Mm-hmm.
So what brought you to Sarasota, Florida?
Well,
Or maybe there's some stops there in between I need to know about.
well, there are some stops. I lived in Nashville for a little while. I took a little break for, I don't know, 8 months, lived in Nashville for a while, which is another great city, by the way. Lots and lots of art, lots of music. That's the first place I lived where I rented a house, and they said, you're a musician? Great, sign here. They, and a lot was happening then. I'd written some pieces, and one of them was being recorded in Australia. And so I got to know some of the composers in Nashville, and then I had a piece played on the radio there. It was sort of starting to happen. So there was that. And then I did a little more traveling. And the reason I ended up in Nashville is that I had really good friends that I would visit 3 weeks a year when I wasn't on the ships. And they're kind of like my adopted family. And they moved here. They got transferred here in 2005, I think.
Here being Sarasota.
Yeah, yeah. So about a mile from where I live now. So I came and helped them move, and then this was then my second home base. So when I decided it was kind of time to settle down and sort of shift my career to more of a local career, this was kind of the natural place. And at the time, I was doing a lot of more like big band jazz and American songbook jazz, and I thought, well, this is a great place for it. The whole way up and down the coast, there's a lot of people who love that kind of music, and of course, this area it's even more so now. But at the time, it was such a hub for arts. There was an orchestra and an opera and a jazz club and just music everywhere. So
Yes, everywhere. And we are the Florida's cultural coast. They brand us that way. And there are actually more arts events per capita in Sarasota County, Florida, than any other city in the United States, even more than New York.
it's
And
amazing.
so, yeah, it is. And like you, I moved here, and I didn't have to really hustle. Like, there's gigs everywhere. Once you are known as someone that will show up on time and prepared, um, that's a big part of it.
Well, there's more to it than that. You're also very good at what you're doing. You're very outgoing, and you're very engaging, and you're present. You're present with each thing that you do. So it makes sense that you would immediately start connecting and get good gigs here.
And then I moved here to take a full-time job at the State College of Florida, which is our area's basically community college, although we do offer 4-year degrees in nursing and early childhood education and things like that, but not in music yet, maybe one day down the road. But I don't know, that was 2009. So 3 or 4 years in, we needed additional faculty to help out in music theory. And so we were looking for adjuncts, just someone to come in and teach 1 or 2 classes. And you were in our fold. Were you already doing some piano work for us?
Yes, I was also already one of the staff accompanists. I did that for a year or something. But I remember the very first day when I was doing that, you brought me in to introduce myself to the students. And so I went through my sort of quick summary of my degrees and my career. And I think it might have been you behind me going, oh, because you knew you needed someone for theory, and I had a master's degree in composition, and you were like, oh.
How fortuitous.
So it was pretty quick. You guys started being able to use me, or I started to teach some of the theory classes. Yeah.
And we had a long-term faculty member, not just a member of our faculty member, but he would actually had been a student at what was then Manatee Junior College. And he came on board, and for 25, 30 years, I'm not exactly sure, Dr. Charles Turan was the head of our keyboard and theory department, and he decided to retire. And that's a hard position to fill, someone that can organize, it's not just piano lessons, but class piano that you have to teach to students that have never had piano lessons. I was in that class as a college student. Music theory, oral theory. We needed someone who could do music appreciation. And we did a nationwide search, and those things are pretty rigorous. And you have committees, members that aren't in on music. And lo and behold, even though you were already in our fold, if you will, you were the top candidate for that job out of all the 80 people that applied. And we said, will you come work here full time? And that's really, Don, when I saw you start to flourish, because I don't think you had any really teaching experience. And being that adjunct, I remember you telling me, so I never knew I would enjoy teaching so much. And it just fueled this whole new career for you. Do you remember that feeling?
I do. It actually started when I was doing as an adjunct teaching theory. And I thought, because if I'm writing, I'm writing pretty advanced, theory. It's not basics, not teaching people their basic key signatures and stuff. And I thought, oh, I'm going to go back to that. But it's fascinating because music is like a science. You can always learn something new, even in the most basic stuff. So just even teaching that theory 1 and oral ear training 1, I really started to I really started to enjoy it.
and to see the progress the students would make and the connections you're making with the students and watching them flourish and grow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yes. And now I've been here long enough, I've that was before I've been full-time 8 years now. And now I have students in the community, I just hired a tenor section leader for the church, my church choir, and it's someone who was a student 10 years ago. I remember when you started, Mr. Bryn. So it's nice. Yeah, it's nice to make those connections. Yeah.
And you have moved up assistant professor, and you are at this college, we call it on continuing contract. Others might know that as tenure. You are the music program manager. You're running the music program as the administrative leader of the music program, and your footprint is now solidly embedded into what is going on here in the music world at the State College of Florida and in Sarasota in general. And so this importance of having this other job, I have another job where I make music in the community, and you have this other job where you make music, as you were saying, at the church with the church choir. So tell us how that job came to be.
The Unitarian Church. I started off there as an accompanist a few years ago, and I don't even know what to tell you about it. It was playing piano, and I accompanied guest musicians, and I accompanied the choir. And I really fell in love with that right away because all the guest musicians come from the Sarasota Orchestra, or it's really good, or the local jazz players or things like that. So I got to again play all kinds of things. And then last year they decided to sort of reorganize the music program, so I took over as the music director. So now I'm conducting the choir. It's making me laugh as we review all this, because when you start your career, you just have no clue where it's going to go. I mean, you just don't know. And if you're open to ideas, so many things can happen to you. Here I am directing a choir, and and teaching ear training.
Right. And you also are great at bringing in the students from the State College of Florida to give them the experience of performing for, in a church setting, and giving them gigs. And, it's a great example of what they can do with their career once they're on that path. And for the students to see all of us in the music faculty that we do this, but we also do this and this and this. It's that, leading by example. And it's something I think our students really take with them when they go.
I think so. I think often one of the most important things that happens in theory, my classes and in my ear training classes, is when I say, wait a minute, this is important because, and I could give them a real example from my life where I had to learn a song in the car on the way to a gig. I'm singing background vocals, so I'm using solfege, listening to a tape, figuring it out. So by the time I get there, I've learned it and memorized it without playing a note. There's real life experiences that you will use these skills for, and that seems to make more impact. And they go, oh yes. And I don't know, just having impact to what you say helps students learn it.
100%. And you also, with this music technology degree going back to 1990, who would have thought you land in a job in Sarasota, Florida at a community college where there is the sudden blossoming of online education and the need for a music program to develop an online music appreciation course. And who better suited to do that than the guy that's been doing the music technology stuff from the start. And so I taught face-to-face music appreciation, as did you, and we taught online music appreciation. And at the time, the college sort of required everybody to use the same textbook. And they thought the idea was, well, we don't want to confuse the students. If some students are in this section and others are in this section, and maybe they have to move sections, or they go to the bookstore and they buy the wrong book because it's for a different section. But over time, I think they realize the students are fairly smart and adaptive. And then they said, okay, the faculty can choose which textbook they want to use. And somewhere along those lines, I got one of these emails from a publishing company. Said, oh, I see you teach music appreciation. Do you want to work with us to develop a book? And I didn't have any time or capabilities, I didn't think, to do that. But I remember I just forwarded you the email. I think you were kind of new. And I thought, because they were looking at like online, more digital delivery of a book. And I said, this would be great for Don. And I forwarded it and I said, oh, he'll probably delete it. Really in my head, I thought, I'm just doing my due diligence. And then all of a sudden you come in my office and you go, I'm going to write a music appreciation book. And I thought, well, there you go. The man that can do anything is now going to do everything.
Yeah, I almost forgot about that day and how, yes, that's true. It's funny at the time I had worked for the couple years before that developing some curriculum for ear training and some online applications for ear training. So my head was already in this sort of I want to develop something and I want to develop something academically, a textbook. And then that came through and I was like, oh, well, I definitely know things that I want to teach. The way I teach music appreciation doesn't perfectly align with the textbook we're using. I'm not saying it's a bad textbook. It's just, I know how I want to teach it now, the things that I want to get across. And so it all gelled right together in that one thing. I said, yes, this is what I want to do. I want to write this textbook. The email was from Great River Learning. And I contacted them. And it's funny because I thought, oh, it must be really hard to get in with a publisher. That's the thing. You write a book and then you have to try and sell it to a publisher, right? So
this was the reverse.
It was the reverse. And I was really excited that they were like, yes. And then of course, you have to have an ongoing conversation and they give them ideas of what you want to write about and they have to believe in it and go, okay, this is one that is going to work. And so it all came together. And so I wrote a textbook, music appreciation textbook.
And once it came out, because I had been teaching out of the same book from the same publisher for many, many years and semesters. And like you, there were things that I didn't quite like about the book or different ways that I wanted to present material. But you're sort of limited by a textbook. And when your book came out, I was not thumbing through it because it's all digital. I was scrolling through it, which I loved, and the wonderful photos and images that you have in there and the way you present everything. But the big reason that I switched to using your book in my music appreciation class, I'm going to be honest with you, was that it is 13 chapters. And the other textbooks, are, 38, 48 chapters. And why that is important to me is as someone that taught face-to-face 2 times a week or online, that I was always frustrated that the chapters didn't line up with the weeks of the semester, because we tend to build online courses, particularly week by week. And I thought, he's done it. He has made a chapter for every week of the semester for a college semester. I was like, this is amazing. And I was teaching first with it online, but when I went to face, I had a little bit of fear and trepidation that I wouldn't be able to cover in 2 class meetings but it's like perfect. Like the pacing is so fantastic. And the students really enjoyed using that textbook, I have to say. And of course, they didn't know any different because I knew different. My appreciation of the music appreciation text was really great. So bravo to you for putting out there a great textbook that I think people should really look further into using. It's fantastic.
Well, I really appreciate that resounding endorsement. That's
Well, it's for no other reason that I truly believe in the product. And if I didn't, I wouldn't have kept using it, and I wouldn't be saying other people should use this book. What was one of your favorite things about writing this book?
Well, I'll talk about that, but I just say one of the first things is that I really appreciated working with GRL, Great River Learning, because they were very helpful with that kind of thing, like organizing right from the beginning. Okay, think about your semester, think about how you want to organize, how you would want to teach out of this book, which of course I had already, been teaching the class. So I was like, well, immediately, I want 1 chapter per week. So my favorite part about writing the book, that's a really tough question because there's a lot of things, but I have some things I'm really proud of in the book. Like I have some videos. There's a lot. There's quite a few videos and interactive things in addition to the usual music examples that you listen to. And so I have videos, and it's basically me giving an introduction to music or the basics of music theory, or how we write music down. How would you read music? And it's not meant to be like something for a music major that's really intense and you have to memorize all these symbols. It's really just a quick explanation of how music was written down. And if you go up the page, the note goes up. Or, I actually show playing at the piano. These are how chords are built. See how it's every other note. And I have videos showing my hands. So putting all that together was a lot of fun. And after teaching like some fundamentals of music, I really kind of felt like that was just one of my strong skill sets, being able to show these more complex musical ideas in a very simple way so that they don't have to overwhelm and just help people grasp.
And your technology skills really come into play, because it's when I'm showing these videos to my classes, we're all like, wow, because it's perfect to consume. You understand it completely, but there's also that appreciation and respect for what it took to create. It's not just a regular video, right? It's like a video inside a video with the keyboard comes up, and like, how in the world does he do this?
Well, a little bit of video editing. No, but yes, no, I appreciate it. There's also this interactive orchestra. So that was probably the biggest technological challenge. And we had to actually do a lot of research finding some JavaScript libraries that were just new at the time that would be able to do this. So it's a picture of an orchestra seating, and there's a recording of the entire orchestra, but you can turn on and off sections. So you can hear just what the woodwinds sound like or just what the strings sound like. And keeping all those tracks playing in time was a bit of a challenge, but I think a really important lesson for especially people who don't get the opportunity to go to some concerts, and so they don't really know. It gives them a chance before they go to a concert to say, well, what is this going to be like? What am I listening for? How is this music put together?
Right.
Yeah.
It's pretty remarkable. And I hope the book is doing well for you, and I hope that other people will look to it when it comes up for an adoption at your school. When you're looking for music appreciation textbooks, you really need to give this one a serious look. Particularly, I'm going to say it works great in person as well. But if you are teaching online, it is all digital, so easy for the students to access as well. Which is sometimes, I remember when we had online, our other textbook we used to use, we'd spend a week just trying to get students registered in that correct section online through the publisher. And you and I together came up with all this prose, and here's how to do it step by step. And your book was just seamless. So to remove those barriers was really important for our students. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. It's there's still often, there's still sometimes issues, books will run out of codes or things like that. But generally speaking, the idea was to just make it as seamless as we could.
You did that for certain.
Yeah, sorry, I got distracted.
So Don Bryn, performer, composer, arranger, website builder, coder, app developer, church choir director, educator, counselor. What's next for you? World traveler. What's next for you?
Well, it's just been this year that I took over being the music director at the church. So I'm still kind of getting that to where I want it to be, and then deciding where are we headed in the future for that, sort of developing that program. So that sort of takes on my time. But my goal really is to get back more to composing. I have some pieces that I've started writing and haven't finished, and I really feel like that's my love. And I got this. I did a program almost 2 years ago now with the European Academy of Fine Arts for film scoring, and I just did really well, and I loved it. And I already fluent in the technology and everything, and of course most of the students are young. They're fresh out of they're taking a master's program, or they're fresh out of undergrad going into masters, and I have a lot more experience. So of course, but my teachers were all like, you should be doing this. You should be doing this.
Yeah, there was like a competition, and you got really, really far in that competition, if I recall, right?
Yes.
And how does one get their foot in the door for film composing?
Well, it's like a lot of music: hard work, talent, and luck. And it's funny with me, for composing, I've never wanted to rely on the luck. So I don't want to rely on composing for my career. I don't want to rely on it for my income. So but that's also one of the reasons why I've made most of my income either playing or now teaching. But so in my free time, I'm putting that in quotes, free time, I'd like to go back to doing some composing and just because I like doing it. And I think it's probably my greatest skill. So I would like
Well,
to.
I know you are very busy, and so I'm always hesitant to ask you to take on a project because, um, like me, you're not good at saying no, and you do everything 120%. And so I never want to put some pressure on you. And this isn't really composing as much as it is arranging. So I don't know, I don't know how you feel about the two and where the difference lies. You can still be creative with arranging, right? It's just not original ideas. But as the conductor of the local pops orchestra, I've had this idea for a show, start to finish, maybe an hour piece of music. I've made a list of 38 songs that have proper names in them. So, Danny Boy, Billie Jean, Jesse's Girl, you name it. Like all these pop rock tunes and maybe folk tunes that have a proper name in them. And I have a list. I keep it on my notes on my phone. And every time I hear something else, I add to it. I want a through composed entire piece of music with transitions going from song to song with these proper name tunes. What do you think about that?
I think it's great. I think it's a great idea, and people would love it, especially because there's sort of an element of a game to it. Wait, what one is next? What's this?
Name that tune. That's the name of the show. Name that tune.
Okay, there you go. There you go. Yeah.
All right.
And I have
So you're on board. We can start next week.
we have to schedule it for the next time I'm available. No, yeah, I think that's a great idea. That's a great idea. Now, if it was me and I was going to do a composition, we would take each of those melodies as a theme and see how we could develop a piece based on the themes from those songs. But you might not, people wouldn't be able to sing along the same way. So.
Right. My crowd would be like, what? But a very advanced cultural crowd would be like, oh, how smart. There is a piece of music, the second movement of a symphony that's based on the motive to the song Do the Hustle. Bum 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 ba-dum bum 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 bum. And it starts, I should play that. So along what you're talking about, that sort of line.
Right.
And I think it's our generation, Don, that sort of meets this intersection of classical music, if you will, and popular music, and where it all comes to meet together.
Yeah.
Because even stuff that I've heard from you, even original compositions, but some arranging that you've done for me, I sense this great, you grasp the concept of the symphonic orchestration and the popular style. You really meld that together. One of your many, 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 many talents.
Well, I think I've been really lucky. I mean, really fortunate to have done so many different things. And we were just talking about how it's almost magical the way that has sort of landed me in this specific church job where we're really trying to modernize but keep the classical and like do so many different things. And I've just been really lucky that I have the experience that I'm able to do all these sort of different things. But I was going to say, that's also one of the things that I wanted to do with this textbook was, especially if people aren't necessarily like in our area where if you live in Sarasota, Manatee, there's a lot of opportunities to go hear music. But maybe you're in an area where there isn't, or even a lot of students coming into my music appreciation class, I want them by the time they finish to at least be open or have been exposed to different kinds of music, things that they would just, if you're just listening to the radio all the time, you're only going to know pop songs. That's it, generally. So even jazz or, there's just so much music. If you look at the entire history of music and the whole world, music appreciation, we still only cover basically, sort of the Western history culture in the whole world. There's so much music out there, and we only tend to hear, if you turn on the radio, you're going to hear a whole bunch of 3-minute pop songs. Nothing wrong with that, but I'd love to people to be, just go out and explore. There's so much more music here. I kind of tie it into travel. Like if you're going to explore music, don't just explore what's on the radio. Go looking, go explore all the other things that are out there. So that was really just one of the things I wanted. In the first chapter, we actually give students the opportunity to think about their own culture from outside of it, like an anthropologist. Well, what would you explain? How do you describe your culture? Well, then how, so you can start thinking about music and being aware of your own predispositions to what you like, and maybe be open to, oh, well, maybe I can listen to something else, even though I have never heard it before, and not have a predisposition to dislike it.
How would you describe this music to an alien? I believe is the prompt. Something
Yeah.
along those
Yeah.
lines. And we should say the name of the book, Now Hear This,
Now hear this.
by Don Bryn, published by
Great. Great River Learning. Yes.
Great River Learning. And it's fantastic. And you're fantastic.
Oh,
And I can't wait to see what's next for you. Because you just keep you're just building layers on layers on layers.
well, maybe it'll be an hour-long arrangement followed by some major thematic development piece play.
No, I think I'm going to turn on Netflix one day and I'm going to hear a theme to a Netflix series. I'm like, oh, that's great. I'm going to watch the credits. They're going to say Don Bryn.
Oh, that would be great. I wouldn't mind doing some film. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And you have a great season lined up with the Pops now too, right?
Yes, we're halfway through. We're halfway through, so we have 2 more. But next season, we're already actually I'm booked 3 years out on pop shows. So I'm in now 4 years out talking to people.
That's amazing how you have done such an amazing job building, this orchestra from started with like a smaller community group, and it's now so popular, and you sell out all your shows and you have these great ideas. They're all,
I know. Well, the good news is the Name That Tune thing wouldn't be for 4 years. So we've got some time to work on it.
oh, great. Okay. We'll put it in the schedule.
We'll do 15 minutes of music per year. We'll have it ready for that's how I organize things, my friend. Well, listen, I really appreciate you spending some time with me today. It's always we get together once or twice a year, just the 2 of us for breakfast or lunch and just to catch up. And that's a shame. I wish there were more.
It's not often enough.
I know we have a little coffee shop here on campus and we need to put that in our monthly calendars.
I'll put it in my job description from now on. Meetings.
Very important meetings. Well, listen, you have a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining me. And it's always fun to hear. I learn every time I talk to you, I learn more about you and what you're doing. So thanks for sharing.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate your time.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.